Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is the show where we really cut through all the noise. We sift through, tons of material to get you those essential insights, the things you really need to know to be properly informed.
That's the goal.
And today, we are tackling a subject that, well, it almost always sparks strong opinions, loads of questions. Scientology.
Definitely a hot topic.
Our mission here is to explore its maybe unexpected origins, look into why it seems to hold this strategic appeal for some really famous people.
Right, the celebrity angle.
Yeah, and confront those controversies that just seem to stick with it. And we'll wrap up with a detailed look at the recent Danny Masterson trial.
Which brought a lot of things to light.
It really did. Okay, let's unpack this.
It's definitely complex, often misunderstood too. We'll try to navigate how it went from like a self-help idea to this global movement that's facing some pretty serious challenges legally and, in the public eye.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to really get it, you have to start with the founder, right? L. Ron Hubbard.
The man himself.
He was this prolific science fiction writer, former Navy guy.
Yeah.
And on May 9th, 1950, he publishes Dianetics, The Modern Science of Mental Health.
And the pitch for Dianetics was?
Well, Hubbard presented it as this revolutionary self-help psychology. He claimed it could, boost your intelligence, get rid of unwanted emotions, even help with psychosomatic illnesses.
Right.
His whole view was that humans are basically sincere, smart, and good deep down. Dianetics was the key to unlock all that potential.
And it took off.
Commercially, huge. Sold over 100,000 copies in just 2 years.
Yeah.
Generated a lot of money for the early foundations.
But there's always a but.
Yeah, but the established psychological medical communities, they immediately rejected it, called it pseudoscientific, basically.
Okay. And then things got trickier.
They did. By 1952, the Dianetics Foundation actually went bankrupt. Hubbard even lost the rights for a bit, though he got them back by 54. So this early legal heat and money trouble, it forced a big change.
A strategic pivot, you could say.
Exactly. So you're saying Dianetics didn't just naturally evolve, it kind of morphed into a belief system called Scientology. Why?
Well, it seems largely because Dianetics practitioners started getting arrested for practicing medicine without a license.
Oh, okay. So that pressure.
That pressure directly led to founding the Church of Scientology. February 18th, 1954, Los Angeles. There was this perceived demand for a church structure.
So what was the point of calling it a religion? What did that do?
It was a critical maneuver. Hubbard called Scientology an applied religious philosophy. And that label, that reclassification...
Let them sidestep the medical laws.
Precisely. It allowed them to use the protections given to religious organizations, so now they could charge fees for spiritual counseling auditing without the same kind of regulatory oversight a medical practice would face.
Clever.
But it also kicked off this long-running conflict with doctors and psychiatrists, especially because the church was and is really strongly against psychiatric drugs, ECT, lobotomies, that kind of thing.
Okay, so stepping inside this new religious philosophy, what are the core ideas? What makes it tick?
Okay, so foundationally, you've got the idea of theans.
Theans.
Yeah. The belief is that humans are actually immoral spiritual beings. We've just forgotten our true nature over, countless reincarnations.
The goal is to remember who you really are.
Pretty much. Rediscover that spiritual identity. And to do that, you have to deal with enneagrams.
Enneagrams. Those sounds technical.
They're described as these subconscious recordings, like commands stored in the reactive mind. They supposedly come from traumatic experiences.
And they mess things up.
The belief is they block your natural abilities, distort how you think rationally.
So how do you get rid of them?
Through auditing. That's the main practice. It's one-on-one with a trained auditor.
And that involves the E-meter, right? The two cans you hold.
Exactly. The E-meter, or electropsychometer, it's supposed to measure tiny changes in electrical resistance in the body, which they interpret as indicating mental stress or charge related to these engrams.
And the aim is to become clear.
Right. To clear someone of these negative influences. It's also been noted that auditing seems to use some hypnotic techniques, maybe to induce a light trance state, build dependency, obedience.
And this auditing is part of a bigger path.
Yeah, it's all laid out on the bridge to total freedom. It's this very structured, hierarchical path. You start as a pre-clear, work towards clear, which means you're supposedly free from the reactive mind. And then you can go on to become an operating thetan, or OT.
Operating thetan. What does that entail?
Well, each level promises more insight, greater spiritual abilities, the advanced OT levels. They supposedly grant abilities beyond the physical body. But these upper levels, they're incredibly secret.
Secret how?
We're talking materials delivered in locked briefcases, sometimes literally chained to your arm.
Wow. And expensive, I assume.
Very. The costs escalate dramatically. For example, OT3, the famous Wall of Fire level,
Yeah.
that was nearly $9,000 back in 2013, just for that one level.
And that's the level with the Xenu story, the alien ruler from 75 million years ago.
That's the one. Yeah, OT3 reveals that whole cosmology. And this structure, this ladder of secrets and escalating costs, it really incentivizes deep financial commitment.
Makes it hard to walk away once you're invested that much.
Exactly. Plus, revealing these secrets progressively fosters this really strong us versus them mentality among people inside.
And there are other control mechanisms too, right? Like ethics.
Yes. A whole system of ethics designed to ensure people stick to the doctrines.
Yeah.
Part of that is the idea of suppressive persons, or SPS.
People who are seen as hostile or blocking progress.
Right. And members are often required to disconnect from SPS, cut off contact.
Even family.
Even family.
Uh-huh.
And then there's the Sea Organization, the Sea Org. That's the elite group, the clergy, basically. They sign a billion-year contract.
The billion years.
Symbolizing eternal commitment.
Yep.
So you have this whole structure, the bridge, the secrecy, the cost, the ethics, disconnection, the Sea Org. It all works together.
It paints a picture of a very controlled environment.
Very hierarchical, very focused on commitment, and especially at the top, extremely secret.
So how did this very specific kind of insular world manage to get so intertwined with Hollywood?
Yeah.
That brings us to the whole celebrity angle.
Right, the allure of stardom. And this wasn't accidental.
No, L. Ron Hubbard was apparently very aware of how much influence celebrities have. He noticed people tend to copy their idols.
Makes sense.
So back in 1955, they actually formalized something called Project Celebrity. The goal was explicitly to recruit opinion leaders.
And that continued.
Oh, yeah. There's a policy letter from 1976 stressing that the rehabilitation of celebrities was crucial for rapid dissemination of Scientology.
It's using their platform, basically.
Exactly. Leveraging those parasocial relationships where fans feel connected to stars to make Scientology seem more credible, more normal.
So how did they actually go about recruiting these stars? What were the tactics?
Well, they really targeted the entertainment industry directly, pushing the idea that Scientology teachings, especially auditing, could boost careers, enhance creativity, handle the stresses of fame.
Practical benefits, then.
Yeah. And they used public outreach, too. You know, the personality test, the Oxford capacity analysis.
Oh, yeah. I've seen those offered on the street sometimes.
Right. Often the results suggest you have problems that, surprise, surprise, Scientology can fix. They also set up special facilities, celebrity centers, for discrete study and auditing.
Tailored for the industry.
Totally. Flyers apparently showed up at places like Central Casting, ads in Variety, The Hollywood Reporter, posters with famous Scientologists saying, "I'm a Scientologist, come find out why." They even referred aspiring actors to Scientologist acting coaches.
Like Milton Katzlis. He was well known.
Right. So, a very focused effort.
Okay, but from the celebrity's point of view, what's the draw? What need is Scientology fulfilling for them?
That's the key question. Scientology promises they can overcome those engrams, reach that state of clear. That resonates if you're focused on self-improvement, peak performance.
Which actors often are.
Right.
Yeah.
And the philosophy itself, it really emphasizes individualism. It celebrates your identity as ultimately divine. It promises ultimate power over your own mind, self, destiny.
That sounds appealing if you're already successful or driven.
Exactly. Plus, some argue it offers a kind of spiritual validation for their wealth and lifestyle, suggesting success isn't just material, it's maybe a sign of spiritual advancement.
And we've seen big names talk about benefits.
Definitely. Tom Cruise famously credited Scientology with curing his dyslexia. John Travolta has often attributed his career longevity and success to the church. It's a pitch that seems tailor-made for the unique pressures and aspirations of fame.
And once these celebrities are in, what's their role? How valuable are they?
Incredibly valuable. They have flexible time, huge resources, massive media connections. They lend Scientology legitimacy and appeal just by being associated with it.
And they actively participate.
Oh, yeah. Contributing to Hubbard's music albums, handing out Scientology books at concerts, thanking the church or Hubbard in award speeches.
Right, I remember seeing some of that.
They also feature in films made by Scientology's own studio, Golden Era Productions.
Yeah.
There's use for internal training, promotion, and there's definitely pressure on them to proselytize, show up at big events.
Do they get special treatment?
Reportedly, yes.
Yeah.
High-profile stars sometimes get dedicated Sea Org members assigned to help them, cater to their needs. It's a symbiotic relationship, in a way. But you mentioned it's a double-edged sword. How so?
Well, when big names leave and start speaking out, that's hugely damaging. Think Leah Remini. Her book and show caused a massive stir.
Right, she became a very vocal critic.
Exactly. These high-profile defections can amplify all the negative stories, expose controversial practices to a much wider audience. It directly undermines that carefully crafted positive image.
There was even that story about Tom Cruise's publicist telling him to maybe dial back the public Scientology talk because studios are getting worried.
Right. The association can become a liability, too.
So who are some of the big names still associated today?
Well, Tom Cruise, John Travolta, Elizabeth Moss are probably the most prominent current members people know.
And notable former members who've been critical.
Leah Remini, obviously. Nicole Kidman, Katie Holmes are often mentioned as former members, though they haven't been as publicly critical as Remini. But yeah, it's these departures, especially the vocal ones, that really fuel the controversies.
And that brings us squarely into part 3, the controversies, because there are a lot of them, and they constantly challenge Scientology's public image.
A web of controversy is a good way to put it. Let's maybe start with the money side.
Okay, the financial practices.
Right. It's a strict fee-for-service system. Auditing costs money. Moving up that bridge to total freedom costs more money. We mentioned OT Third being almost $9,000.
And that's just one level.
Exactly. The costs keep escalating. Critics jump on this. They've called it an unusual and dangerous kind of money-making machine.
And argued the religion label is just a cover.
Some argue it was a strategic move to conceal predatory financial activities. But proving fraud legally is tough because technically nothing concrete was promised in terms of results.
So that religious shield is pretty effective, at least in the U.S.
In the U.S., yes. Scientology hasn't been convicted of fraud here, but internationally, different story.
How so?
L. Ron Hubbard himself was convicted in absentia in France back in '78 for fraud, illegal business practices.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And French courts have repeatedly convicted Scientology officials for things like organized fraud, embezzlement. There was even a tragic case in Lyon where the head of the local church was convicted of fraud and involuntary homicide after a member committed suicide, apparently due to financial pressure from the church.
That's incredibly serious. So a real contrast between the U.S. and some European countries.
Definitely. The legal view varies significantly.
Beyond money, there are these deeply disturbing allegations of abuse and coercive control. What kind of things are alleged?
The allegations are wide-ranging and serious. Sexual abuse, including child sexual abuse and trafficking, forced abortions, really intense emotional abuse, and forced labor conditions, especially reported within the Sea Org.
And how does the church typically react when these things come out?
Former members and critics describe a pattern of aggressive responses. Think lawsuits, intense surveillance, smear campaigns, trying to foster a climate of fear to silence accusers.
Leah Remini has talked about that a lot, hasn't she? Coordinated attacks after she left.
Yes, she's been very public about experiencing harassment and slander campaigns. And then there's the ongoing mystery surrounding Shelley Miscavige, the wife of the current leader, David Miscavige. She hasn't been seen publicly in years.
Remini filed a missing person report for her.
She did, back in 2013. It just highlights these persistent, unanswered questions and the kind of fear that surrounds the organization's inner workings.
When you hear about these kinds of allegations, you have to ask, why don't more people just leave or speak out sooner? What keeps them in?
Well, one major factor is the disconnection policy we touched on earlier.
Right, cutting ties with anyone deemed antagonistic or an SP.
Exactly. And if you don't disconnect from an SP, you become a potential trouble source, or PTS, that halts your progress on the bridge. It's huge pressure.
And the impact on families must be
Devastating. There are stories of parents disconnecting from children, children from parents, spouses splitting up. There was even a report of a 6-year-old girl being declared suppressive because she wouldn't disconnect from her mother.
a 6-year-old. That's chilling.
It is. And while the church has sometimes downplayed it or changed its official stance over the years, they apparently acknowledged it as a human right. In 2012, critics say it's consistently used to isolate members and control them.
And then there's the policy that sounds like something out of a spy novel. Fair game.
Yeah, fair game refers to how the church deals with perceived enemies. Hubbard himself wrote some pretty shocking things back in the 50s and 60s.
Like what?
stating that an enemy may be deprived of property or injured by any means by any Scientologist without any discipline. He also wrote, "The law can be used easily to harass, ruin him utterly."
So, explicit permission to attack critics.
That's how critics interpret it. Tactics allegedly used under this umbrella include black propaganda, spreading lies to destroy reputations, filing floods of frivolous lawsuits to drain resources, and even covert operations.
Covert ops. Seriously.
Yes, there was Operation Freakout, a plan to frame journalist Paulette Cooper for bomb threats because she wrote critically about Scientology, plans to frame a mayor, and the Guardian's office, which was formed in '66.
That was like their internal intelligence agency.
Sort of, and they were caught illegally infiltrating U.S. government agencies, including the IRS. It was a huge scandal in the late '70s.
So this combination, fair game tactics, the threat of disconnection, the constant litigation.
It creates this pervasive atmosphere of fear and makes people terrified to speak out, to leave, to challenge anything. It's a powerful way to silence dissent and protect the organization.
Have governments tried to push back beyond the fraud cases?
There's been scrutiny. In the U.S., back in 1963, federal agents actually raided church offices and seized hundreds of U-meters. On the grounds, they were making false medical claims. The meters were eventually returned, but with the stipulation they only be used for bona fide religious counseling.
But again, no fraud conviction in the U.S.
Right. Contrast that with Canada, where in 1992, the Church of Scientology of Toronto was convicted of breach of public trust related to that spy ring infiltrating government offices.
And France, as you mentioned, has had multiple convictions for fraud, embezzlement, and lists it as a dangerous cult.
Right. Spain had arrests in the late 80s, though that case was eventually dismissed. Belgium launched investigations in the late 90s into potential criminal activity, fraud, practicing medicine illegally, so lots of international legal friction.
But it's still recognized as a religion in many places.
It's complicated. Despite all these challenges, the European Court of Human Rights has sometimes ruled in favor of Scientology on religious freedom grounds in specific cases. So it's a real patchwork quilt, legally.
And you mentioned the internet earlier. How has that changed things?
Fundamentally, Scientology always relied heavily on keeping its upper-level materials secret. The internet blew that wide open. Trying to suppress information online often just draws more attention to it, the Streisand effect.
Yeah. So the secrecy that was maybe a tool for control became a source of public relations nightmares online.
Exactly. It created this paradox where their efforts to maintain secrecy actually led to much greater public exposure of the very things they wanted kept hidden.
And that public exposure, that scrutiny, the alleged real-world impact of these policies, it all seemed to converge in the Danny Masterson trial recently.
Oh, absolutely. That case was a watershed moment in terms of public attention on Scientology's alleged practices.
Okay, give us the background again. Danny Masterson, the actor from that '70s show.
Right. He was accused of raping 3 women between 2001 and 2003. The police investigation started up in March 2017. He was arrested in 2020.
And the first trial ended how?
Hung jury. Mistrial declared in October 2022, but the DA decided to retry him.
And the second done.
Convicted. May 2023, a jury found him guilty on 2 of the 3 rape counts. He always denied it, pleaded not guilty. But in September 2023, he got sentenced 30 years to life.
Now, a really key difference in that second trial was the judge's decision about testimony, right?
Huge difference. Judge Charlene Olmedo allowed expert testimony specifically about Scientology's internal policies regarding reporting crimes to outside authorities. That was denied in the first trial.
And why was that so important?
Because all 3 accusers, and Masterson himself, were Scientologists when the alleged rapes happened.
Oh.
And the core allegation from the prosecution and the victims was that Scientology policy actively discouraged or outright forbade them from reporting Masterson, a fellow Scientologist, to the police.
What did the victims say happened when they tried to report internally?
They testified they were told things like, you can't rake someone you're in a relationship with. They were warned against going to the police, told it would make them an SP.
And when they eventually did go to the police, years later...
They say they were declared suppressive persons and kicked out of the church, subjected to harassment. There were also allegations that they were pressured into signing NDAs, offered money up to $500,000 in one case to stay quiet, forced into internal ethics programs.
And Leah Remini weighed in strongly on this.
Very strongly. She called the conviction an indictment against Scientology and its leader, David Miscavige, alleging the church enabled Masterson.
There was also that issue with leaked documents.
Yeah, pretty big deal. Masterson's former defense lawyers got sanctioned by the judge. Why? For leaking confidential discovery materials from the trial, including the victim's private information, to a lawyer representing the Church of Scientology itself, who wasn't even officially part of the criminal case team.
So information meant only for the criminal defense ended up with the church.
That was the finding. Prosecutors were obviously deeply concerned, saying sensitive info was now in the hands of Scientology. It just fueled the perception that the church was improperly involved behind the scenes.
So this trial really put a public face on those long-standing claims about church interference, harassment, maybe obstructing justice.
Exactly. It became this major case study, playing out in headlines, validating for many critics what they'd been saying for years about how these internal policies allegedly impact real lives and the justice system.
And the alleged harassment didn't stop with the criminal trial, right? There's a civil suit, too.
Correct. The accusers filed a civil lawsuit against Masterson and the church, alleging an intense fair game campaign against them after they came forward.
What kind of things did they allege?
Really disturbing stuff. Stalking, people showing up at their homes, cars being run off the road, physical invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress.
Specific examples.
One plaintiff reported her dog died suddenly from traumatic injuries, suspected poisoning, being filmed without consent, chased by people they believe were church operatives, constant online harassment, fake sex ads posted in their names.
Just relentless pressure.
Another plaintiff claimed people took pictures from her driveway, that a window in her young daughter's bedroom was mysteriously broken. Even Masterson's wife at the time, Bijou Phillips, reportedly mocked the court papers on Instagram.
So the accusers felt this fair game stuff was meant to silence them.
They explicitly said it nearly stopped them from seeking justice because it made them feel their abuser was completely untouchable, protected by the church.
How has the church itself reacted to Masterson's conviction? What's his status now?
Well, the trial was obviously another huge PR crisis, entangled the church in major controversy again. After the conviction, Masterson was reportedly expelled, declared an SP.
Okay, so they kicked him out.
Yes, but the reasoning given internally, reportedly, is quite specific. He was declared an SP for not maintaining the high ethical standards of a Scientologist and for other reasons, but explicitly not because he was convicted of rape by a jury.
So they distanced themselves from the conviction itself.
It seems like an attempt to expel him due to the negative attention, perhaps, while still internally maintaining he didn't commit the crimes he was convicted of. It's a nuanced position.
And what does being declared an SP mean for his family who are still Scientologists? Like Bijou Phillips, who filed for divorce after the sentencing.
That's where disconnection comes back in, starkly. They are now required, under church policy, to sever all ties with him. If they don't, they risk being declared SPs themselves.
So his conviction forces his family within the church to cut him off completely.
It illustrates the policy's harsh reality very publicly. The trial also renewed focus on the church's tactics and its relationship with law enforcement. Remini brought up issues like a retired LAPD captain allegedly taking funds from Scientology for police charities.
And wasn't there something about a Scientology kiosk in an LAPD station?
Yes, that too. All things that raise questions and potentially damage the church's image, maybe even threaten its tax-exempt status or its classification as a religion in the long run.
So we've traced this arc from Dianetics, the self-help book, through the strategic shift to religion, the embrace of celebrities, landing in this persistent, deep entanglement with controversy and serious allegations.
Right. And the Masterson trial really feels like a major turning point. It dragged those alleged internal policies like disconnection and fair game and their human cost out into the mainstream spotlight like never before. It poses really significant challenges for Scientology's legitimacy and image moving forward, especially now in the digital age where secrets are much harder to keep.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? It seems the core tension here, the one that persists through all of this, is between Scientology's claims of religious freedom and the documented alleged impact of its practices on individuals, on families. That conflict remains central, maybe the most enduring part of its ongoing story.